Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of Cannabis Capitol's Pop Politics. I am Chris Egger, and I am joined today by the one and only Blunt brother, Chad White. Chad is a pioneer in the cannabis industry here in California. He's been doing this in the regulated market for quite some time, and I'm really happy to have him as a guest. He's a co-founder of Blunt Brothers, as I mentioned, one of the licensed distributors here in the state of California. He's also a co-founder of Iconic Farms, in the sense that Blunt Brothers and Iconic Farms came up at the same time and became licensed together. And he has now moved into a role as a consultant in the cannabis, or the regulated cannabis space, and helping people get through a lot of the hurdles. And he's going to talk to us today about the municipal politics environment here in the state of California. But most importantly, Chad, welcome.
Hey, welcome, Chris. Thank you, man.
Yeah, it's good to see you.
It's going to be fun.
It's good to be here with you. And I got to ask you, so I want to do this on the front end. Tell me a little bit about, so you have a partner in Mark Johnson, the other Blunt brother. The two Blunt brothers are Chad White and Mark Johnson. We got to give Mark some props on this. But tell us a little bit about what Cali Legends is about and what you're doing right now, because it's going to lead us into a discussion on the municipal regulatory environment here in California.
I mean, really, it came down to me and my brother trying to back away from day-to-day operations, trying to spend some more time with the family and stuff like that, but didn't want to exit out of the cannabis industry as a whole. We've done a lot. We still feel like there's still a need for like people that have been around, founders and stuff like that have been around, to make sure that this keeps going in a better direction than what it's been doing. But Cali Legends, we essentially have market and business development company for cannabis companies across the board, whether it's a retail, cultivation, distro, stuff like that. We come in and it's kind of a menu on what they really need and what they need to either grow their business, get off the ground, get a license, any of that project. I mean, we're not taking every single person that comes our way. We are kind of being a little picky on who we want to work with and stuff like that. But it's been really fun, you know. We've only been off business off the ground maybe a month or two ago. We have a couple clients in the pipeline already that we're helping them bring in some brands, build some of their brands that they have, help them with some of their business back of the house stuff, some SOPs and stuff like that. And just walk them through the whole process of running the cannabis business. It's crazy, you know. I mean, everyone says we're in the cannabis business, but like I used to say, when we sat down on municipalities, it's a compliance business. You have so many hurdles you have to jump over to run a proper business the right way, and to be profitable. It's a double-edged sword, you know. So.
It is. And by the way, you know, people should know you were doing this very early on in the regulated. So after Colorado, you were involved in Oregon and Washington State before California even passed, all-encompassing. So you've been working in regulation for like a decade, right? I mean, you've been working in the regulated.
Yeah, right around there. I think it was 2014. I think maybe it was 2012. 2014, we went up into the Washington market. And then we expanded down into the Oregon market during that time too. Right around 2014, 2015, we expanded into a consulting gig in Nevada as well on a well-known company out there, which was really nice. But California's always been our home, and the only reason we went elsewhere for licensing and to try to figure this out was California wasn't licensing yet, you know, so we had to take it where we can get it. So we came back to California, started really working hard. I never really left. I basically hopped back and forth every other week for businesses up there because I had a family down here. But it entrenched. Like, we learned a lot of the processes and a lot of the working with the city municipalities, what they exactly want to hear, how they want your business ran, metric, all this stuff, all the ins and outs that people in California were so behind on learning. It made it a lot easier of a process and a transition when we started going after our licenses in California.
Right, and I think it's important for people to know too. You played a role in the early phases of regulation, right? You actually led. You're responsible for legislation that has at the municipal level out in San Bernardino and other places where you really pioneered the introduction of it, right? Because you've been best practice. So when we talk about pre-AUMA Prop 215 compliance, I mean, you've been operating in regulatory compliance to the ability that you could here in California. And then post 2016, I mean, so you've actually worked on a number of municipal regulatory initiatives, right? Whether as a supporter or a wrangler or as the key proponent.
Yeah, a couple in Orange County area we helped out with on wrangling and helping support on some of that. We weren't looking to be a huge company at that time. We just wanted to see well-regulated companies coming into this industry, and our goal was always to be a distro. You know, that was kind of my back of the house, my specialty and stuff like that. So when we got out of that, when we came into San Bernardino, and there was any thought and understanding, we helped push through an initiative that passed, and then we ended up working with the city to help the city rewrite a couple things to make it, I mean, at least amendable. And I mean, that's your thing with all the municipalities. Like when you have a group of people that fund an initiative, they all want to they want to fund it. They want to make sure that they're taken care of, which sometimes gets in the mix and not making the best, you know, we'll say law or licensing scheme for that city to move forward. And then you work on the back end and you have city people that want to overly tax you or overly regulate you more than any other business they do in their own city, you know? So there has to be a give and take. And I think a lot of the cities that have come on board in the early phases, say like 2016, 2018, stuff like that, they're really starting to learn overtaxation hurts the businesses and doesn't help expand businesses in their cities. The lack of some revenue because you're overtaxing it, you're already getting some tax money from this, you know? So I mean, I give props. I think it's Sacramento County, unincorporated county, which I believe is going to almost, I think it's zero tax across the board outside of retail shops. And I freaking pat them on the back for that. You know what I'm saying? I mean, this industry, they're taxed five times before it gets to the actual consumer. So it's just mind blowing how much they're taking away from this market and the market growth and everything like that, man. Definitely.
You know, for the conversations we've had historically, and for people to know, I mean, we've worked together on these political agendas throughout the state of California. You more so in Northern California than I, but definitely you and I have been in attendance at city council meetings together from, you know, the Central Valley and the Central Coast down south. You know, the idea that people were going to get taken advantage of by a system that they had never participated in, right? We always talk about it, that we were really trying to get people to understand that there was a common ground that we were all going to pursue and try to land on, right? But that common ground went so far to, you know, to open the door in 2016 that it's almost become impossible to operate a business. So you started with Sacramento, and I really appreciate that, because I always like to ask people before we delve into issues of, you know, what needs to change or what, you know, a cannabis consumer should know about what's happening in the political climate. What can you tell me about what's going right now in regulation? I know you're licensed. I know you're operating. I know. So, you know, Sacramento is making a good move. They're hearing what people are saying, right? That the taxation levels are just too massive right now, right? So my question to you is are you seeing that happen in other places right now? Or where's it going right? Is San Diego getting it right? Is Santa Ana getting it right? Is San Bernardino getting it right? You're active in all those markets.
I think all municipalities move slow, you know what I'm saying, which sucks 100%, including our state itself. To get the state to start to lower the taxes, you know, it's going to be a while for that happens, you know, and even though they're starting to listen to the process, I mean, we're, in the AMUA 2018, so almost 4 years into this, 3.5 years into it. Sacramento's had licensed places where they were taxing them already in Sacramento prior to 2016. So I think it's just taken them a long time to learn that we're not just their extra piggy bank to try to pull money out. But at the same time, it's another power struggle too, because then you have a lot of municipalities like the city councils, even some of the city staff. I mean, the way they work with writing up the initiatives and stuff like that, and tending to write it up to be overly regulated to where it doesn't allow for like the small people to get in or anything like that. I think they're doing great wonders with social equity right now. And I give props to Elliot with working a lot with the social equity people he's been working with.
Elliot Lewis from Catalyst?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, what he's been doing and working with not just his corporate backing that's helped him get to where he's at, but, you know, bringing in people from the social equity circles to actually help expand his brand, but also give back to the community, which I think is phenomenal. There's a company in Santa Ana I went to about 6 months ago. I'm not sure if they're operational yet, but they were going to run basically a shared use space for social equity applicants and stuff like that, to where they all have their cages. They can use the facilities to make their products, and then back in, and then they would all flow through the distro that the shared use signed with and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things to help people just to get into the licensed market. It's such a huge hurdle. It's so expensive. I mean, and a lot of these places, I mean, a lot of the long-term, we'll say, legends of the cannabis industry not necessarily have a lot of backing on paper. I mean, a lot of them that have been around for a while learned how to do things properly, spread their money out, invest in other businesses. So when licensing came available, they can use their monies and stuff like that. But there's a lot of reasons that it takes back from those type of people, definitely, man. But
and it's funny, Chad, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but you know, the system, you know, the mindset has changed, right? You know, the public acceptance of cannabis, the truths of what that, you know, the holistic wellness truths of it, the opioid addiction truth of it, right? The idea that in communities where cannabis is introduced, you're seeing a decrease in certain other, you know, uses, right? Like everyone wants to talk adult use, and there's the medicinal dialogue, but you know, the truth, and I got to ask you, right? So the industry has been regulated by people who are not active in the cannabis space, right? So they're coming in and telling us this is the way you have to operate. They're trying to end the illicit market realities that have, you know, failed. The drug war is just obviously, you know, something that we all want to put behind us, right? And the chaos of it, transitioning to a regulated market, I think we all aspirationally said taxes, okay, we'll pay them because we want to prove ourselves. We want to be valued. Santa Ana proved with their, you know, the grand jury review of their adult use cannabis tax that children's programs in the community of Santa Ana have benefited tremendously from the adult use cannabis tax. So my question is are only potheads supporting children's programs in that city, right? And my question to you is, in that front, you know, when you say that, you know, when the activists, when the activists like we've been in the past come out with a regulation and gets on the ballot, and then the city does finally come to that common ground, is it, you know, what do you think about 2022? Do you think there's a place for the municipal, you know, citizen initiative to make a change for the better in some of these markets that haven't opened yet?
I mean, I think there's a huge opportunity in 2022 right now. I'm not just on, you know, citizen backed or, you know, working with the municipality itself and getting measures passed in 2022. I still think you have to put the municipality on its back burner, but it's cost a lot of money to write up an initiative, to collect signatures and everything like that, as we know. But that being said, I mean, 2022, if you're not looking at 2022, you're looking at 2026. So, and how long it takes for municipalities to just get through the process of licensing. Next year is the year, you know, and I know there's a couple groups out there that are writing a couple up. I am scared of some of the groups out there and continuing this, hey, I'm the big boy, we're just going to give licenses to the big guys in town, or they're going to write in things that kind of just make sure and guarantee their license or something like similar that they did in certain cities. And you're gonna continue to see lawsuits going after these cities for companies that don't get a license because they make it so many hurdles to get over to get the license. It's basically disqualifying certain people, you know. I like, we'll bring up Costa Mesa. Like, I like Costa Mesa's initiative. It's basically unlimited for the most part, but it's still giving favoritism to a certain group of people. So, and that favoritism at the end of the brand
new industry, right? I mean, it's a nascent industry, and now it's been, you know, AUMA passed in November 2016. The regulations were finally, you know, galvanized in 2018. And so nobody has a track record, basically. And, you know, and that's my problem right now, is that I'm trying to figure out for the cannabis consumer, understanding why it hasn't led to more fruition. You know, you're saying that Costa Mesa is doing it right. What's your opinion about Corona out in the Inland Empire as well? I mean, have they approached it similarly? These are two big cities that are coming up.
I think Corona's a pretty good city for the most part. They did a lot of research. I think they researched this for over 2 years, which took them way too long for them to do that. You know, I think they could have done it a little bit faster. Their number of licenses is on point. It's almost a one per capita in the city, which is nice, and their distances. So I think Corona, Corona's doing it okay. I still think Corona is giving a little bit more credit to, hey, those that have operated another storefront before, instead of maybe giving a little bit of local or social equity concern to their process. You know, there's going to always be something that you want to see better, but it's at least you're getting down the line. It's just keep going. Let's build on it and then build on it and build on it. And if you have say a municipality, like we'll go back to San Bernardino. San Bernardino is a complete, I'm not going to lie, it's a shit show right now. If anybody watches their city council meetings online, it's almost a comedy show, the back and forth the banter, or whatever you want to call it, between certain council members and everything. It's not good for a city. Doesn't look good for a city, but they actually got something done. They're settling a bunch of their lawsuits this year, which is nice. They opened up some of their caps, and then they're going to reopen the process, from my understanding, sometime toward the end of this year, early next year, for unlimited license in every aspect except for the retail portion, which I think is a great idea. Their taxes aren't overly burdensome.
Right? That economic stimulus, right? The overburden part that is stymieing and that's my point, right? That I almost feel like the citizen initiative is potentially one of the few pathways in communities that are treating this like it was, the 2000s, where this was still a war on drugs kind of mindset, right? Instead of that common ground of recognizing all the benefits and none of the negatives. Law enforcement and public safety, I think, have grown accepting, in the cultural shift to the regulated market and mindset. I've had former police officers on here who are now security consultants with the industry and kind of bridging those dialogues and stuff. And most communities have benefited from the heavier security presence and those regulations, and we get that, right? The non-diversion of what have you of product into an illicit market. But so do you think then that like Corona and Costa Mesa should encourage other cities in Southern California to be looking at something, doing something, maybe putting something on the ballot in 2022?
I think all the licensed communities, municipalities, need to start pushing on the rest of these communities to start doing something, or to lighten up some of their zoning. So that, you have Colton, which has had licensing for almost 3 years. They don't have one license, anything in their city, and they've been open for 3 years. No retail, but everything else. The taxes aren't overly burdensome. You have the city of Wildomar, but its zoning is so complicated, you basically have to buy a huge shopping center to be able to put a retail store in there, and stuff like that. So, and they've had licensing, I think, over a year now. So some of these cities put on a licensing scheme just to put on a licensing scheme to show face, but they really don't want licenses in their city, So I like the citizen initiative. I said my only problem with that is the people that put money, because it costs money to do that, so you have to raise money and stuff like that. And most of the people that come in are usually some businesses that want to open up that city for licensing or something, or a local that wants to open up the city for licensing. And then they try to write it up to be very beneficial toward themselves and not beneficial to the cannabis community as a whole, which scares me a little bit. To be honest with you, I think there's a lot of municipalities out there that just need education. I was doing tremendous, great work with Iconic when I was on their political side of the business. I've sat down with cities up and down the coast, and it was a matter of just, hey, let's start moving the needle to getting this to a yes, to getting the city to write something up, But I think also, as a single company doing that, it kind of also scares the industry that you might do it the same way you write a citizen initiative. So maybe almost like a group of almost an alliance LCBA and a couple other bigger alliances get together and say, hey, let's just recommend somebody out of each of our groups that go to these meetings and sit down with these council members, sit down with these city managers, and start getting a process moving forward in these cities. I think it will almost be beneficial more and more cost effective, to be honest with you.
Right. I was going to say, so what do you think makes sense for a common ground agenda for the industry? We've talked with Sean Kiernan, Weed for Warriors, who you introduced me to originally. I'm going to throw that out there, way back in the day at an event. And the Weed for Warriors introduced the California Cannabis Reform Initiative concept earlier this year, right? And we've been discussing the themes around that, focusing on the onerous level, the heavy hand of taxation, which hasn't resulted in a robust industry. It's actually quite the opposite, right? It's set up roadblocks for success. And the local market access, right? And there's been different legislative attempts at that. But, from your perspective, are those common ground themes that make sense for the industry?
I mean, definitely common ground themes, you know. I think it is taking on a huge aspect of going after state law and trying to basically change the entire state law through a voter initiative, you know. I mean, we tried to pass cannabis at the state level for what, 2 times before we finally got it passed in 2018 with AMU. It's definitely not close to being a good licensing scheme whatsoever. But I think, you know, sometimes you get things done faster if you work with the sitting officials to get things moving and changed. Yeah. Instead of really trying to waste. I mean, like I said, a statewide citizen initiative is huge. You know what I'm saying? And that's going to cost a lot of money.
It's a complex undertaking. We had a panel a couple weeks ago where the Long Beach Collective Association co-founder Adam Hijazi was on, and a couple other folks, including Sean Kiernan, and they were talking about it. And that's exactly what they said. You know, do you find that when you approach city councils, and I know you've worked with a lot of them, that they're open to listening about what it's going to take to create a thriving industry, not just because that's where I start saying, you know, what price do we have to pay for regulation, legalization? And at this point, we know now 5 years down the road that it's almost too much, right? To have said, and the federal government's looking at a 30% tax as well when they come into play, right? I don't know if that's going to be for interstate commerce or if it's going to be on top of what you're already paying in California. There's no way a business can survive in that environment.
No, not at all. And I mean, there's a reason why. I mean, even the new initiative that Sean's pushing and stuff like that, you know, there's a lot of common ground on it. But you're also going to have licensed operators that already have licenses in these cities that are going to be against it for a big reason. I mean, they've invested a lot of money into their companies. They've invested a lot of time and energy into getting these licenses. And that potentially might jeopardize those licenses that they've acquired and started moving forward with and become operational with. So I think there has to be, like he said, like where we're at now, there almost has to be just a complete overhaul through our state. And they have to take it upon themselves, and we really need to push on them. And the industry really needs to push on them, you know. I understand a lot of some of the big boys in California went to the national level and trying to work on that and stuff. But I think California, we're the 8th largest economy in the world. You know what I'm saying? At the bottom line, our home's California, and our home needs to get fixed. So I think there's a lot of things that we can do. And out of all the municipalities that I've sat down with, and I've contacted almost every single council member, well, over the last couple, not lately, but I've essentially contacted most of the council members for every single city to talk to them and, you know, just educate them on some of the things with cannabis. I think I've only got maybe about a 10% really just a negative reaction just to me being in the industry and wanting to talk with them about it at all. And the rest of them are pretty open. Like, they're willing to take a call. They're willing to, like, hey, let me know where they're at with their city and stuff like that and why they're not trying to move something forward. You know, they're pretty open to the public, you know. You just got to reach out and talk to them. I think that's a lot that comes from at least our long-term legacy operators too, is that we were freaking designed to learn not to deal with really government agencies. Don't deal with the government. Don't deal with the police. Don't deal with the fire department. And it's, you know, and it's a change of mindset for some of those guys as well. Like, we have to be open to talking about what we want to do. We have to be open about why we're not making any money. We have to be open about why we're not growing anymore as an industry, and we're starting to curtail a little bit. We had a really good 2 years. I mean, this year there's a lot of municipalities that opened up, but a lot of those opened up towards the beginning of this year, applications, and now they're just starting to get licensed operators building out and getting open. I thought this year was going to have more than it actually did open up. I'm really excited about 2022. I think if some of the big heads in this industry can take their egos out of some things and really just open up this industry, a lot of these guys are vertically integrated. So at the end of the day, whether it's their storefront selling their product or another storefront selling their product, I think fucking having more storefronts, period, at the end of the day, and access to this medicine and this recreational fun is huge for the industry. And I think that's what they really need to push on.
I think it's funny that you say that, because I always use the term rising tide floats all boats, right? The stronger the regulated market becomes in California, it's going to benefit every operator in that regards, right? People feeling more comfortable that they have access to regulated environments and the quality that comes along with it, right? But at the same time, the price point has become, it's just the tax, the layer of tax on top of, right, what is a product that costs money to produce, has created that maybe dissatisfaction with the consumer, right, who may very well want to go there, but is economically kind of going, well, why would I go to the licit market and not to maybe an illicit market provider for the same product? It's not the same quality, and we know that. It doesn't have the same safety and stringent quality controls that go along with it. But you and I, you're going to laugh, because I always used to say Uber disrupted taxi cabs the way regulation disrupted cannabis. But you've worked in a regulated environment, even though people would have said in Prop 215 compliance, but you had been regulated. You knew how to do it in Washington. You knew how to do it in Oregon. It was possible to do it. And that was the thing. No one's really talked about where Fiona Ma was in terms of collecting sales tax revenues from licensed cannabis dispensaries that were attempting to, there was a lot of money. I'd be interested to see if it was more than what's being earned right now, right? Because I think you're right. I think the more stores that are available to consumers to join the regulated market, I think it would overall benefit the state without having to have these heavy-handed taxes that seem to be stifling the success of regulated operators. And that's the argument I keep making, and why I keep on Pop Politics reminding you and reminding other guests, we're talking to cannabis consumers right now who are cannabis voters. So, you know what I mean? That's really the goal here, is to get them aware of these issues. You know what I mean? What are your thoughts on cities that really should be looking at it? I have got the Huntington Beach Pier behind me here. I still can't believe that.
Oh, Huntington Beach, 100%. I mean, Huntington Beach, 100% should be looking at it. If I was Seal Beach, even just you look at it, just the tourist areas or any big metropolitan cities and stuff like that should definitely be looking at expanding their licensing schemes and stuff like that. And Santa Barbara, they kind of did a really freaking small licensing scheme, but Huntington Beach all the way down La Jolla, Temecula is a huge market right now. Murrieta is a huge market. You mix that in with some of the wine, the tourism you get out there, it'd be phenomenal. My home city of Riverside, it would be huge. They're trying to do this whole downtown revitalization. That's Riverside County itself allowed for a few shops, and they're going to have some on the outskirts of the city and stuff like that. But I think if you're going to let it in Riverside County, and it's going to be, a mile and a half down the road, why are you not opening up your city? Your city needs tax money. It needs help to deal with some of this homeless problems. It needs help to deal with, fucking reenacting some of these kids in these schools and stuff like that. There's a lot that these cities need money for, especially after a year of pandemic and a year of spending money without really freaking generating a lot of money for their city. So,
right. To your point, I think, delivery can go to other cities, but it's probably the least efficient retail model, right? To have a car driving around neighborhoods and trying to time it right so they can be efficient and optimize it right. So all these cities, it's legal in California to deliver to any residents in the state, right? Still. So they're missing out on those sales tax revenues. They don't even need to put an additional tax on top of it. It's like any business opening. It's like when you open up a Carl's Jr. or you open up a 7-Eleven, right? You get sales tax from the sales that go on in that alone. And of course, there are the state taxes that are out there. So that's interesting that you pointed out some of those cities as being, kind of behind the curve on it. That is something that I would say for me is the most frustrating, is that people have this, it's just, we've moved beyond the 1990s war on drugs mentality when it comes to cannabis, right? We've seen the proof since 1996 and Prop 215, right? We've seen the emergence of all this scientific research, the holistic wellness and the medicinal benefits. We've seen it as the safer of an adult use choice to recreate, right? That's my belief, right? I'm not trying to lay that on you, but I think you would agree with me. So, I go back to it, where is the common ground for the industry right now? Because you live in both worlds, right? I know that you spend time in a consumer environment and you also spend time in You just got back from Hall of Flowers, for instance. What was the pulse up there from that? I mean, tell us a little bit about how that all went, and were people talking politics up there as much as they were retail and product?
It was a great atmosphere. It was fun. It was very enjoyable. A little hot. I was hoping for a little bit cooler, especially in Santa Rosa, but it was great up there. I mean, the industry, there's a lot of good vibes going on, a lot of clicks going on. We'll say that. It's good to see some new brands coming up and showing themselves off a little bit, not just all the big major brands that have the huge boosts or something like. So it's good to see some new brands out there, some great grown flower, some amazing extracts that just off the charts, like stores should be carrying 100%. There was a little bit of politic talk, not much. You know, I think it was really in the new product lines, what their thoughts on new product lines are, what's the new up and coming stuff. And then it was just a lot of celebration of, hey, we love that everyone's doing their own thing, they're doing stuff and they're growing, and you're seeing we're still here.
Right.
I mean, they might not be making as much money as we hoping, but everyone's still here. They're kicking and they're still thriving, you know? So that's what matters the most.
Well, and I know that you historically, the Blunt Brothers, historically as a distribution partner, have a long history up in the, the Emerald Triangle, the Northern California grow community. You know, we've been talking a lot about, 2/3 of the state's population roughly lives here in Southern California, right? This is the consumer market. This is where retail is a big issue. Do you see cultivators right now having a different agenda? Do you think that there's a way that the industry separates the Northern California mindset from Southern California? And how are your friends in the cultivation world up there doing?
It's a little, I mean, you're coming into Croptober right now, so everyone's worrying about making sure their crop's going to get sold, what the price points are going to be, where it's going to be at. You have a really good couple clicks like at Amendo, that have a collection of farmers that they all work for, like basically filling in one brand, and they kind of come together on like price points, kind of making
like
collectives essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you got a couple up in Northern California that they got taken advantage of a lot in the beginning of licensing schemes, because they came in before right at the beginning, when you were able to still bring, say, black market weed into the licensed market through Metric, like it didn't have to have a source on it until 2019 or something like that. But I think they've taken their wounds. The ones that are still around have learned how to optimize their COGS, all their costs 100%. They understand that they have to sell some of it wholesale if they want to, even if they want to do a brand. There's no way some of these grows in Northern California are pretty big. They crop out a lot of product. You have to diversify where you're going to use that product at, whether if it's going to get flash frozen, taken to an extractor, or you're going to sell some of it bulk, or if you're going to, and they're starting to learn that they need help from other people as well. You know what I'm saying? They can't just use people from Northern California for the most part, just because, I mean, Northern California and Southern California are completely different animals. In Southern California, a lot of people, they don't want to see the outdoor weed on their shelves for the most part. If it's outdoor weed, they're just going to go to a black market store. But there's a lot of reason for that. Northern California has had storefronts, especially the Bay Area, for a longer period of time than Southern California. So they've had more time to really stomp out a lot of the more easy accessible black market stores or something like that. And Southern California is still fighting that, because the cities haven't freaking realized yet, like, hey, we need to freaking license more shops, or so we can bring in more money also, and then that'll give us money to get rid of these shops. Or maybe these black market operators want just an opportunity to get a license, so it's a double-edged sword. So, but we are coming into Croptober, so Northern California growers are worrying about what they're going to do with their entire crop, how much they're going to crop out. You always have that worry, especially after every fiery season that we have, if it's going to pass testing, especially with soot and smoke and everything on that. And so it's going to be an interesting year, because we've had a lot of ups and downs with the price points in the market.
Yep.
1 second, I'm sorry. last year, I mean, outdoor and, you know, beginning of this year, outdoor product was going for a pretty good price. And this new Croptober.
Trust me, you know, when I tell you, Chad, that's happened to me a million times where someone wants to come into my office and they don't realize I'm in the middle of a meeting. and so I want to get you to that point, right? So I want to close out here, dude. If there is one common ground that you could say, I mean, you know, the bridge between, you guys have that bridge between Northern California and Southern California thinking, right? If there's one thing you could say to the industry right now, right, to kind of remind us of that common ground, what would it be?
Taxes, eliminate taxes. We got to eliminate cultivation tax 100%. It's putting a waste strain on some of our Northern California family and friends in those licensing areas. Being not just a cultivation tax, but the secondary tax at the local level is just killer. You know, like the states, it should be a one tax at the state, and the state can send the money to the municipalities as it's collected, you know, and designate the money toward them. But the city is trying to grabbing more money from businesses that are there to put more jobs into the community. It's just crazy. So 100% common ground taxes. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Second thing is we have to push for 2022, and we have to open up more municipalities, whatever pathway that is, 100%. We have to open up more retail municipalities and get these cities open and more access to the consumers.
I love it. Now, and I always ask any guest, is there anything, a question I didn't ask or something you want to say? Because I really appreciate you taking the time today, brother. And I know how much work you put into moving this entire industry forward, right? Not just onto your own benefit, that rising tide floats all boats mentality, but is there anything we didn't cover that you would like to cover or anything you'd like to say?
No, man, I just want to say you're doing a great job, you know, really trying to put out a voice for the cannabis community. The people that you've had on your show has been freaking really good people for the most part. And, you know, they're doing really good things. I think trying to maybe get them together, like maybe let's do a show with all of us, or let's do a night where we all get together and, you know, have some smokes and see what we can do and push some of these agendas forward. But, I mean, you're doing a really good job in getting the voice out there, brother.
Well, I appreciate you for saying that, man. And you're always welcome in the Cannabis Capitol airwaves if there's ever any updates on Cali Legends. So once again, Chad White, a co-founder, an original blunt brother, right? And meaningfully a licensed, you know, he took it from, you know, from a nascent industry to doing the whole thing. And now he's out there helping people. You're helping us get the word out. And I will be setting up a meeting like that in the future for voices to come together. We did a roundtable, but I think we're going to expand that program a little bit, and I'm going to make you a key invite for that. I really appreciate your time today, Chad. So everyone, thanks. We'll be back next week with another episode of Cannabis Capital's Pop Politics. I'm Chris Egger. I was joined today by Chad White, and thank you all, and we will see you next week. Take care, brother.
Thank you, brother. We'll talk soon, man.
Looking forward to it.